You're listening to a bonus episode of the Cloud Accounting Podcast recorded at the Scaling New Heights Conference in June of 2022. I hope you enjoy. Welcome, everyone, to a special bonus episode of the Cloud Accounting Podcast recording at Scaling New Heights in Orlando, Florida. I am Blake Oliver.
And I'm David Leary. Blake, it's day 2 at Scaling New Heights for us, right?
Day 2.
Day 2. Things have got complicated here.
Really?
There's been weather problems, travel problems. Trying to book interviews has been difficult. So we're going to do an interview where I had 3 people, and we just have one now.
Okay.
So one guest, Jason Richardson. He's the CEO and founder of Bookkeep. Jason, say hi.
Hi, glad to be here.
And Jason, before we jump into what you do now, and I really want to speak in general at a high level about data and accounting data and getting accounting data and the state of APIs and all of that, but rewind us to how you got into this space. What's your background, how you got to it?
My background, I actually did start working at PricewaterhouseCoopers on the engineering side, of before what sold to IBM.
So accounting roots to begin with.
I do. The only test that I think I ever got 100% on was some logic test they gave you for hiring into their engineering department, at Pricewaterhouse, where they then sent you into, as a business person to write code.
Wait, so PwC had an engineering department.
Well, it's what they sold. It's their consulting division. So what they sold to IBM. And so we wrote software. So I was an analyst, which is like a product manager now at Deutsche Bank, building a portfolio management system. Basically, that was my first job. And then I quit and started a tech firm called Internet Cash, which was a prepaid payments card for the internet. That, of course, went, in 2001, went belly up. But I learned a lot through that. And then I worked on a trading desk and wrote automated trading software and did a little trading. But then I opened a wine store because I wanted to automate the back office of the wine store. I did not want to sell wine. I didn't ever stand in the front of the store, but I wanted to pick the point of sale and I wanted to get everything working together. And actually, what we do at Bookkeep is still from the QuickBooks integration from Microsoft RMS into QuickBooks Desktop. The way they did that with the summaries, basically a Z-tape, we essentially mimic that. And so I had a lot of experience. And of course, then I started ShopKeep, which was a better point of sale system. We were the first iPad point of sale. Before Square was even in retail, they were just doing swiping cards on people's phones. We actually had an iPad where you could print a receipt, pop a cash drawer. There's a video, I think it's not on YouTube anymore, but from 2011 of me popping open the cash drawer, printing a receipt. And that video got us so many coffee shops who are like, I don't want this expensive point of sale. I want this thing on the iPad. And that's really where ShopKeep took off way back when. So I've done a lot of different things. And now I started an accounting firm a couple of years ago, which basically has now become a software firm because the accounting part is hard. I feel for all these small accountants who deal with all their clients. It's a very hard job.
So you're like Hugh Jackman, right?
Yeah.
He's like a triple threat, right? He's a singer, dancer, he does everything.
He actually used ShopKeep.
You're an engineer.
Wait.
Oh,
he uses ShopKeep?
In his coffee shop. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
This is
wow.
He uses ShopKeep, yeah.
Because you're an engineer and a small business owner and arguably you own a bookkeeping or an accounting firm as well now.
Wait,
Yep.
So ShopKeep, did you sell that? Did you exit?
I exited in I wasn't happy with where the product was going, and I was so burnt out after 7 years. So I left the company. I stayed on the board, and I was still part of it. But they sold to Lightspeed about a year and a half ago. Lightspeed in Canada, which is a great place for them to go. It's a great company, and I'm very
And they
happy
also
that
bought
happened.
Vend out of Australia, I think. Lightspeed bought.
Yeah, they've been doing a roll-up of all of them. And Dax, who I think he's just stepped down, he's a great guy, and that's a great company. I'm so happy it ended up there instead of at a private equity firm or somewhere else. So yeah.
So then, so you just bored? Why'd you start doing bookkeeping?
Well, literally, I kept trying to start other companies and just burning money on stupid ideas that I thought I was so smart. And I basically pulled back and said, just to keep myself busy, I'm going to do the books in my wine store just so that I don't get involved and try and do anything else that costs me money. And then I was like, oh, I automated this whole thing. I probably could do it for other people. And that's how Bookkeep kind of got started. And we don't do the bookkeeping for other clients anymore. Now we just do the automation part of it, which is for these sales systems.
So ShopKeep was successful, so you decided to keep with the same naming convention.
Yep.
You went with Bookkeep.
Yes. And an interesting story, I paid ShopKeep was the name we wanted, but we couldn't get the domain back in 2008. We paid $500 for ShopKeep. Bookkeep is what I wanted here. I couldn't get it either. I had to pay for it, and that was $30,000. Big difference, but I think it's still worth it. I think it's a good name, and
Oh, I got payroll keep. I got them all.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to go on the next venture. I got all these domains.
David just squatting on all the keeps.
all the keep names.
All the keep
Right.
names. I like it.
hopefully this is the only one I ever going to need ever again.
And with Bookkeep, you started out doing the books, but now you're an automation platform. What are people using Bookkeep for?
So what we do is essentially the manual data entry that anyone does. If you use Square or Shopify, bookkeepers out there are having to log in, run reports, or download orders and do pivot tables and roll-ups in Excel and then type numbers into QuickBooks or Xero or whatever. So we essentially take all your orders and we do proper accrual summaries on a daily basis. So we take all your sales from Amazon Seller or from Shopify, we summarize that into a single journal entry and we post those on the daily basis. Then as your payments come in from your deposits come in from your payments, we also post those and reconcile them in a clearing account. And eventually we're going to get to the point where we actually will double check and reconcile and say, hey, this payment exactly matches that sales day. You're all good, even though you'll be doing that in QuickBooks when you check off, in your bank feed. But essentially we replace that work so you have absolutely accurate books to the day, no matter what sales system you use. And when you use Bookkeep, doesn't matter if it's a Square client or Amazon Seller or PayPal, our system looks exactly the same. The mapping engine's the same. The automatic reentry, you can adjust entries or you can adjust mappings and repost things. Like all of our system works the same. It doesn't matter what your client's using. And we have about 26 apps on our platform. And we want to add as many as we can get access to.
So putting your developer hat on, obviously QuickBooks is an API. Apps have APIs. You connect things. Is a lot of the data still locked up? There's all this talk, we're going to automate accounting. But if the data is locked up and you can't get to it, how does this happen?
It's so frustrating, and I know we've talked about it a lot. But, as an example, I can't get Grubhub to talk to me. I reached out, do you guys have an API? Can we get access to an API? And they just don't seem to care. So we actually had to build a scraper to get the data. You can't get access to, you can get orders from Grubhub through multiple different platforms. You can't get the fees, you can't get the marketing, fees, and you can't get the deposits. So, and a lot of the restaurant
Grubhub
space,
only lets me connect enough of my point of sale to see the order so I can ship the order to my customer.
It's all about the sales.
But I can't get totals at the end of the week or
And another great example, because sales is what drives dollars, people signing up and paying. And TradeGecko is a great example of that. If you remember TradeGecko, it was the greatest inventory management tool.
Intuit bought them,
They
right?
did, yes. And I loved using it for my store, but they eventually started doing invoicing and allowing people to sell. And they stopped focusing on the reporting that I needed to do inventory management. And they moved into sales because that's where they get more customers. So nobody really focuses on the back end, on the accountants, it doesn't pay as well as payments. It doesn't pay as well as, payroll. But in the end, I see that it's a huge problem for accountants, and they spend a lot of time doing data entry or doing reconciliation. In fact, we did a survey, which we should share with you guys. Basically, there's a lot of money spent on outsourcing, on data reconciliation and data entry. If you can't find the people to do it in this country, it's being offshored. So a lot of that work, I think we can automate over time. I do need access to the data. I don't have an API for Grubhub. DoorDash has no automated data exchange. Even if it was an email that had a spreadsheet attached, I could automate that, but they don't do that either.
So if I'm a accountant or bookkeeper, I'm seeing the deposit from Grubhub.
Yeah.
I'm just putting all the income because I don't have an easy way to say this much was the marketing expense and this is the other fee or who knows what the hidden fees are in there. So I'm not getting an accurate representation of my revenue and expenses.
Correct. And a lot of people do it that way, even up to multi-million-dollar businesses I've seen doing it, because either the bookkeeper doesn't have access because the owner didn't give it to them, or because they don't know sometimes, and you're doing a disservice to your client. And your client, if they want to get loans, you're not accurately showing their gross income, minus discounts and minus fees, minus loans. And when you're dealing with Square, as an example, Square, Shopify are starting to now not deposit your money. They want to keep as much money as they can. So they have savings accounts, they have debit cards, and I think Stripe is doing similar things. So if you're a bookkeeper and all you see is the bank feed, you're not seeing the whole story.
Because now that they're becoming banks, the data is even harder to get to.
Yeah, and they still don't have APIs for that. They don't have APIs for their debit cards or their savings account. I'm sure they'll get there, but we can't even access that data either. We want to book those debit card transactions as well into your books, but we don't have access to the data. And it's never a priority for them. I mean, Square still, it's one of my pet peeves with Square, but they still don't have a unit cost in their API for inventory. I can't do cost of goods sold entry because I can see all the items, I can see all the receivings, I can see everything except what did you pay the vendor for that product so I can get a cost of goods sold. I don't even understand.
And this is not just Grubhub. It's like all of them. These services like this where people have sales in and third parties are kind of taking a piece of it.
Yeah.
And they're making, if you're using an app or a company or third party that's putting deposits in your bank account, you kind of can't get that data.
It's hard. You have to, and even it's as simple as what you guys know, which is you got to provision a login for your bookkeeper. Sometimes owners don't know how to do that. Sometimes in a big company, the bookkeepers don't even know who has access to those systems sometimes, so they can't get the data and the communication is always bad, especially if you're using an outsourced bookkeeping firm.
So we need to have like an uprising of accountants and bookkeepers here where we have a huge petition about Grubhub freeing the data, free the accounting data, making APIs like that. So we have to.
Well, what's so funny is that when I watch someone, a bookkeeper accountant do this, even, take a payroll example, like, why are you doing it that way? They're like, what do you mean? That's just how I always do it. They don't think to even say, have you thought about asking XYZ app developer, can they make a better integration? And they never seem to, I feel like they don't think that they can try and push for a better integration or better help. And they do need to. We need to rise up. I mean, we'll build a better integration if we can get access to the data, but it does take clients, accountants as well as big clients who are using these apps to say, hey, I'm not using you unless my back office has better automation or better access to data.
Well, the problem is, I think plenty of us accountants and bookkeepers make these suggestions to the developers, but it's not high priority.
Yeah.
I think you said this earlier. It doesn't drive sales.
Yeah.
Because it's the client's accountant asking for this.
Yeah.
Client's going to be using the app anyway, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like people are going to stop using Grubhub for their restaurant.
Right.
If Grubhub doesn't have an API. So we just have to deal with it,
I know.
And I guess this is the accountant's full employment situation because there's always going to be plenty of work since we don't have this magical system that all just connects and there's no standard for it.
But it's often data entry. It's data entry work and you can't find people to do it. That's one of the problems. So then what ends up happening is the way I explain it is, well, you want your books done within a couple of days of the close of the month, right? So you know how your month was or how your last week was.
Yeah.
Well, and your books are getting done, 6 weeks later, 2 months later, and that's because the data is not available. So,
and for restaurants and e-commerce, like you can't wait that many weeks, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think to some extent, probably some of those app delivery apps don't want you to see all the fees that are being charged, and that might be part of it. But actually, I think it's really just comes down to it's not a priority. But as the books need to get done, so it takes a chain, it's a 100 location chain that's using Grubhub or DoorDash or Uber Eats to say, guys, you need to build this for us or you need to make this data available. I do understand that like Uber Eats has I did talk to a big chain that does use them. Uber Eats does have a download you can get and apparently, but they'll send you a file, which, with all the transactions across all the locations so that you can reconcile. But they need to make that more available somehow. It's going to take the whole industry, I think, rising up.
So do you think this is something that's just smart places are dealing with? Like, do they have special backdoors to this data to franchises? Like, does McDonald's get to go and get all this data? Like, this is really the data exists and the APIs exist. They're not letting us have access.
I think I have to imagine. I mean, McDonald's is on Uber Eats, right? And a bunch.
I think so. Yeah.
I have to imagine that they are requiring some sort of data access for that. But probably they're not thinking like we should make this available to everyone. We haven't. I basically get nobody really wants to talk about it. At least not when I call them. Nope, that's not a focus right now. It's basically what I get.
So you said you integrate with like 26 apps. Who are apps and who out there is good data stewards where you're like, hey, these guys have good APIs. We can get their data because really as accountants and bookkeepers, you should shove your clients onto those apps that play nice with others.
Yep.
Like give us some examples.
Well, definitely Shopify is great. Great APIs, great reporting. They also have great accounting reporting. Square has a really great API, and their summary reports are very accurate. Square is really good with reporting. And, then they get less, Etsy, some of those are more, a lot of systems, it's so funny, they don't even give you reports. It's just, if you want to see your sales, you can download a spreadsheet. Squarespace, I think they might have some summary. Sometimes I look with the client, I'm like, here's a summary report, and they show me a summary report. I'm like, that's not a summary report. That's like, these are your deposits minus fees for this period of time. That's not a sales summary report. And so often we end up just having to take the orders, and we do our own summaries. We grab all the orders, we do our own summaries based on accounting rules, and that's very important. That's why we keep it similar across all tools. So that's one of the problems when you use the integration that maybe the app developer gives you. Often, most accountants know they often don't use it because it's not either done well, or it's not easy to use, or it doesn't use proper accounting rules. So it's a hard problem to solve, but it's going to take all of us to do it together, I think.
So I noticed on your website you talk about cannabis as well.
Yes.
So is that data easy to get to, or is that locked up in whole different kinds of systems?
It's actually, that is a space. So one of where we end up going is into spaces where they need the books done because they get audited. So, and we are moving into bigger businesses. So in cannabis, they have to get their books done because they get audited, and so they need automation. So they need the book because they need the books done quicker. So they do put a lot of pressure on the point of sale vendors to provide accounting integrations. And now we're partnered with Trees. We have a couple others in the space where we're getting data from, about 5 of them, point of sale systems where we are the accounting integration. Because also as an app developer, I also want to market to them and say, guys, don't build an accounting integration. It's too much work. We know you don't want to spend time on it. If you can give us access to an API where I can get all your orders, I will build you an accounting integration automatically using our platform.
From the other direction.
Yeah.
Well, it's almost like a pull. It's like a pull integration.
We pull. Yeah, we pull from the system, and then we post summaries into your accounting system. And
on their side, they could say we have an integration, even though they don't have an integration.
Exactly. And since our clients are accountants and bookkeepers, and Trees is an example, their customers are the people selling and the dispensaries. We focus on the needs, and I just grab the raw data from Trees and we post it in Trees. And when the accountants have questions, they ask us, not Trees. So we do take a big burden off the hand of the of the app developers, if they realize it's a problem. If they're getting enough pain to address the problem.
Got it. Perfect. So Jason, if people are listening to this and they want to get a hold of you, what's the best way?
Well, you can email me, of course, jason@bookkeep.com or bookkeep.co, both work, or come to our website and chat with us, or come see us at the show here. We're usually at shows. We'll be at XeroCon as well, and QuickBooks Connect as well later this year.
Us as well.
Yeah. Great talking to you, Jason.
Nice to talk to you guys finally.
Thank you.